Butterfly in the sky. I can go twice as high. Take a look. It's in a book called Reading Rainbow. Oh, oh, Lord. Hi, how's it going? Welcome, everybody. Welcome to another day today on the JB Font channel. I am your host, James Fauntleroy. So good to see you. The JB Font channel is available on all major podcast platforms, so subscribe to me there. I'm also part of the Revolutionary Blackout Network, so you can find me on the JB Show on Sundays at 1 and on RBN Live on Tuesdays at 4 and the Savvy and JB Show on Thursdays at 6. And my typical live stream will be on Tuesdays at 2. Thank you so much to all of you for joining. And also thanks to our patrons on Patreon, Coffee, as well as members and people who send me mutual aid via various platforms. Thank you so very much. Without you guys, I would not be able to do what I do on a weekly basis. So if you guys would like to, you guys can go to my Patreon on Patreon or to Coffee. And if you guys would like to support the channel there as well. Now, just to let you guys know, if you guys want to get some email notifications, because sometimes the notifications on YouTube are not as reliable as we would like for them to be, then you guys can go ahead and go to my Substack. Go to jbfont.substack.com. And if you guys would like to, you guys can get email notifications straight from the horse's mouth, so to speak, so you guys can be alerted for those as well. Now, what are we doing today? We're going to be doing the reading for Assata Shakur. That's right. We're continuing chapter 9 of Assata Shakur's reading. We're going to be doing that today. This is going to be deep, kind of a trigger warning for you. This is going to be kind of tough to get through a little bit, but this is a very insightful chapter. We're going to be peering into the pregnancy and birth of Assata Shakur's first child. So that's where we're going to be talking about today. So this is going to be on chapter 9 of Assata Shakur's autobiography, which starts on page 141. Right? So page 141. It's actually a relatively short chapter, so this video will not be that long, but yeah, so this is actually going to be a very interesting chapter to get into. And I hope you guys, get a lot out of this, because Assata Shakur has been through a lot. So to let you guys know, I have my tea ready, like usual. Well, I haven't had tea in the last couple times, but hey, you gotta switch it up from time to time. It's kind of hot. It's good though. Gotta get that caffeine going, All right. Get the throat ready. All right, here we go. I was taken to Roosevelt Hospital in Metuchen, New Jersey, and shackled to the bed by my foot. Dr. Garrett had established that I was 1 month pregnant. When he visited me, he demanded that the shackles be removed at once, based on elementary principle that proper treatment, both mental and physical, of a woman threatening miscarriage would not seem to include being chained to a bedpost. My mental stability was also threatened by the round-the-clock guards who sat outside my hospital room with shotguns trained at my head. After 10 days, I was discharged from the hospital over the objections of my doctor, brought to the Middlesex County Jail for Men, and kept in solitary confinement from February 1974 until May 1974. At first, they wouldn't even give me milk. Since pork was served as a staple meat almost daily, I began to slowly starve. In county jails, it goes like this: 1 sheet, 1 horse blanket, a metal cup. Your cell is rated if you have luxuries like salt. They did everything they could to thwart the care Dr. Garrett was trying to give me. They hired their own doctor and insisted that whenever my doctor saw me, the man had to be present. Their man had to be present. This meant severe limitations on the number of visits Dr. Garrett would arrange because their doctor happened to often not make it out to the prison on the days examination had been agreed to and scheduled. My lawyers had initiated a lawsuit against the state of New Jersey in federal court charging medical maltreatment and dietary abuse. Before the date the hearing was scheduled, I was extradited to the state of New York, which made the federal court action moot. When I arrived at Rikers Island, I was anemic and malnourished, according to my entrance physical. New Jersey had been giving me iron pills, but I was anemic up to the last blood test before giving birth. The pregnancy or special diet at Rikers, in addition to the regular food, was powdered milk, juice, and a hard boiled egg daily. This was my diet until I gave birth, and things seemed to go normally. Meanwhile, the lawyers obtained another court order from the New York court permitting Dr. Garrett to continue treating me. When he first came to Rikers, I was in the infirmary. They told him the court order was no good and that he couldn't see me. I was left in a room for 3 days with a woman who turned out later to have tuberculosis. It was May and they had turned the heat off. It got cold again, and women who were having seizures, methadone withdrawals, and one sister who they said had pneumonia all piled blankets on their beds. The sister got worse and worse. Finally, they brought her to Elmhurst Hospital, where they discovered that she did have tuberculosis. I found this out later when she was returned to Rikers, kept in isolation, and the doctors wore masks and gloves when they visited her. I also had Monilia, a vaginal discharge, which worsened because of the Montefiore Hospital doctors assigned to Rikers could not agree on how it should be treated. Now, to anybody who knows what this is, I have no idea because I do not have this type of equipment. Let me know in the comments how bad it really is because it sounds kind of, They refused to treat the condition at all until my culture was returned from Elmhurst Hospital. By the time they managed to get the culture back, the whole inside of my thigh was chapped raw from the discharge, and I could barely walk. Ooh, that sounds painful. It's called Monilia or Monilia, whichever, but I don't know what that is. I've never heard of it, but it sounds painful. She went through a lot, man. And this is what goes on in our criminal justice system. This is something that I think that people really need to consider when talking about how people are in prison are treated. Is it a system of reform, or is it a system of, helping people to get to a better place in order to be a better person? Or is it just a system of punishment? And that punishment is inclusive of torture. This is why the system needs to be changed from the ground up. The system is untenable. It really does not serve a higher purpose. It is not good for humanity. Remember, the United States is 5% of the world's population, yet we have 25% of the world's prisoners. 25%, a quarter of the world's prisoners, and only 5% of the population. Something to think about. Continuing on. Montefiore Hospital and the Health and Hospital Corporation went to court to prevent Dr. Garrett from delivering my baby. The position was that since I was a prisoner, it was not necessary for me to have a doctor of my choice. They also said he was disruptive because when he did manage to see me, he often wrote in my chart, which they found very disturbing. The court upheld him. I was only a prisoner. I went into labor in the morning of September 10th, 1974 at 4 a.m. on 2nd Main at Rikers, where I had been kept in the cycle ward. I got out of bed, took a shower, braided my hair, and packed. My labor was mild, a pinch every half hour, which rapidly became a pinch every 15 minutes. At 11 a.m., I was sure I was on my way, but I had no doctor to confirm it. I was refused to go to the infirmary. Around noon, I asked to call Dr. Garrett, and they somehow got a hold of him. He was at Elmhurst Hospital trying to persuade them to let him deliver my baby. At about 3 p.m., he arrived at Rikers, and I went up to the infirmary to meet him. He told me that I was effaced, indefinitely in labor. I would not allow the other doctors there to examine me. I was taken to Elmhurst Hospital in a motorcade. It looked to me like a million police cars buzzing around the vehicle which I, a woman in labor, was riding, and they all followed into Elmhurst Hospital, up to the living room. They surrounded the hospital. That's got to be crazy, man. Being pregnant, about to give birth, and they still consider you a danger. So much so that they had to have a motorcade and police all over the hospital just because you're about to have a baby. That's a lot. That's just for one woman about to have a baby. Like, how dangerous can she be? That's like the most vulnerable position you can be in. And they still consider her to be dangerous. Whew, this system, man, I tell you. There was a demonstration outside Elmhurst Hospital in support of my right to choose a doctor who would deliver my baby. And Evelyn and Dr. Garrett held a press conference at the hospital to explain the situation. There was actually 2 policewomen inside the labor room and several outside. I was having contractions every 5 minutes. Finally, I let one of the doctors, a resident, examine me to see how the labor was progressing, which turned out to be a terrible mistake. When he finished, I was bleeding. After that, there was no way I would let any of them touch me again. I ordered them to bring me the stethoscope to see if the baby's heart was beating normally. And after a few instruments, and a few other instruments I would need because, as I said, I'm delivering the baby myself. It was a standoff for a couple of hours. Then a nurse told me to walk around to ease the pain and encourage the labor. I got up, then pretended to fall out, knowing how afraid they were of lawsuits. And the doctors rushed over to pick me off the floor. If they were worried, I stated again, I'm delivering this baby myself. I checked the baby's heart with the stethoscope. It was beating normally. Imagine that, man. Just imagine. Oh my God. Any person who has, give birth in the comments, how, what would be going through your mind if you were Assata Shakur in this? Because this is wild to me. I'm like at a loss when I was reading this earlier. That, or the press conference, or the demonstration outside of the building seemed to do it. They told me that if I signed a release statement absolving them of all the responsibility, they will let Dr. Garrett deliver my baby. I signed, making certain that they had no control over Dr. Garrett or anything having to do with my labor. And that was that. He took over. He examined me, listened to the baby's heart, and, at some point, broke my water. He explained carefully everything that would happen and answered all my questions. He gave me local anesthetic in the cervix. I didn't want Demerol or a saddle block, but the paracervical block seemed okay. At this point, I was very tired. After that, I was still in labor but felt little pain. I went to sleep for a while. I woke up about 3:30 a.m. and I could feel the baby lowering, and I thought I could feel the baby's head. I called the nurse. She said without looking that I wasn't ready yet. When I insisted, she looked and went running for Dr. Garrett. They wheeled me into delivery. He gave me a local anesthetic and did the episiotomy. I pushed 3 times and she was here. At 4 a.m., Kukuya Amala Alugbala Shakur was born. I said, check that baby out, just to ensure her subsequent safety. The birth itself was peaceful and beautiful, out of sight. It's very important for a woman to go through the birth process experience with people she trusts. Later that day, September 11th, they still hadn't brought me the baby. Dr. Garrett had gone home to sleep, and when he returned at 6 p.m. that day, I still hadn't seen the baby. He reminded me that I was supposed to breastfeed her. That, sorry. They told him he hadn't written a prescription for breastfeeding. Finally, brought me the baby, and I breastfed her every 4 hours. Another incredibly beautiful experience. The nurses from the nursery were very friendly and kind and kept me informed about the baby's condition. But the staff in D11, the cycle ward where I was kept in a tiny guarded room, were something else again. They allowed me only one shower a day, no toothbrush or toothpaste, only mouthwash. They didn't furnish it, a friend can't bring it, and the prison won't allow it. I had to beg them for a bra while I was nursing. The prison refused to let me bring one. Many strange doctors tried to examine me to hasten my discharge and get rid of me. I came close to physically brawling with a couple of them because I refused their examinations. Finally, they discharged me anyway, without the consent of my doctor. The Commissioner of Corrections, Benjamin Malcolm, had to sign a paper taking all responsibility for my discharge. Wow. They did not want her in that hospital no longer than they needed to. It was like, have your baby and go. That's pretty much how they treated her. And that's our healthcare system, especially when it treats the incarcerated. Sad to say. I know this all too well because my uncle, who was in prison, and he had been in prison for 15 years, 15 years already. And he was known as someone who was well behaved in prison, didn't cause any problems. And when he was having a medical emergency, they had him handcuffed to the bed. He had died handcuffed to the bed. So yeah, that's how they treat the incarcerated people in our country. 15 years. Still handcuffed. Even after he passed. As if somehow he was going to magically come back to life. They didn't have the decency to remove the handcuffs. That's how they treat people. They put me in an ambulance, chained me to a stretcher, and brought me back to the women's house detention at Rikers Island. They took me straight to the infirmary and said, "You'll have to stay here and be examined." I was really depressed, having been separated so abruptly from my baby. I said, "I don't want to be here. I won't be examined here. Send me to the PSA, punitive segregation area, solitary confinement. Anywhere. I don't care. I just have to be somewhere by myself. Just leave me alone." That's not quite what they did. When I refused examination, I walked out of the infirmary and they called the goon squad, several large female officers. They all jumped on me and started beating me. They had me on the floor. Eventually, my arms and legs were chained. They dragged me by the chains to the PSA and stopped only when a nurse asked them to please stop. So they put me on a mattress and dragged the mattress. They took me to the observation room and left me, hands and feet cuffed. I had no sanitary napkins, no means to wash myself. The cuffs cut into my skin. The scars are still visible, and my wrists were bleeding. Later, I found out that I had received an infraction for slapping an officer in the face while they were beating me. I still refused their medical examination. They finally brought me napkins. I was left on a mattress, on the floor, no bed, no shower. I was there for 2 weeks. I continued to refuse all their medical attention, insisting that Dr. Garrett examine me. I refused to eat, so eventually my breasts, which were full of milk, stopped hurting. They offered doctors all kinds they offered doctors all kinds of drugs, mainly tranquilizers. I'm sorry. They offered sorry, I can't read for today. They offered doctors of all kinds and drugs, mainly tranquilizers. They sent the psychiatrist who had the nerve to ask me if I was depressed. No shit, Sherlock. The disciplinary board met in front of my cell and gave me additional sentence of 14 days in PSA. All other inmates were cleared out of PSA. During the time, I was still refusing most food. I was so weak I fainted a couple of times. At that time, it was also Ramadan, when it was forbidden to eat until sundown for the whole 2 weeks. I just ate once a day when the food was edible, and for the first few days, I ate nothing at all. After 2 weeks, they said, "If you agree to be vaginally searched, you can go to your floor." I did, and went to my floor. The next day, the captain came down to my cell and informed me they had decided to lock me up again for refusing a complete physical from the medical staff assigned to Rikers from Montefiore Hospital. What had happened was that when I was returned to my floor, they told me that Dr. Garrett had been permitted to examine me and that he was at Rikers Island, that my lawyer had gone to court and the court had ruled that I could be examined by Dr. Garrett. So I waited. A white doctor came in order and said, in order for me to see my doctor, I must see him and be examined by him first. I refused. This is the crazy part. Then they brought in a black doctor who greeted me with, "Hey, soul sister." He was really sneaky. I refused him too. So Dr. Garrett was forced to leave and I was put back in PSA. They threatened me with an administrative segregation. So I sat on the floor and refused to move when my sentence in PSA was up. They gave me an infraction, a verbal reprimand, and said the vaginal search would be sufficient. Then the next day, they locked me up again. So invasive, man. Look, I'm not even a woman, and this is so invasive, man. Wow. This time, I was locked in my cell for a month. I continued to refuse most food. They let me out to shower whenever they felt like it. I began a hunger strike at one point, and after a few days in the tiny cell, I was sick. I wondered how long I would have to hold out. Evelyn had filed a writ of habeas corpus before the Brooklyn federal court against Commissioner Malcolm and Essie Murph, superintendent of the Women's House of Detention on Rikers, to force them to release me from punitive segregation. I was to appear in court before the hearing, but I didn't know the date. Then the deputy told me, "Your court date's been postponed, or your lawyer sent her advice. See a doctor." It was a lie, but I believed it. I was examined by the prison doctors under what I thought was Evelyn's advice. So I was no longer locked, just in jail, and separated from my child. Poem. Leftovers. What is left? After the bars and the gates and the degradation, what is left? After the lock-ins and lockouts and lock-ups, what is left? I mean, after the chains that get entangled in the gray of one's matter, after the bars that get stuck in the hearts of men and women, what is left? After the tears and disappointments, after the lonely isolation, after the cut wrists and the heavy noose, what is left? I mean, like, after the commissary kisses and the get your shit off blues, after the hustler has been hustled, what is left? After the murder burgers and the goon squads and the tear gas, after the bulls and the bullpens and the bullshit, what is left? Like, after you know that God can't be trusted, after you know that the shrink is a pusher, that the word is a whip and the badge is a bullet, what is left? After you know that the dead are still walking, after you realize that silence is talking, that outside and inside are just an illusion, what is left? I mean, like, where's the sun? Where's her arms and where are her kisses? There are lip prints on my pillow. I am searching. What is left? I mean, like, nothing is standstill and nothing is abstract. The wing of a butterfly can't take flight. The foot on my neck is part of a body. The song that I sing is part of an echo. What is left? I mean, like, love is specific. Is my mind a machine gun? Is my heart a hacksaw? Can I make a freedom real? Yeah. What is left? I am at the top and bottom of a hierarchy. I am an earth lover from way back. I am in love with losers and laughter. I am in love with freedom and children. Love is my sword, and truth is my compass. What is left? That's the end of chapter 9. So what do you guys think? That was deep, man. That hurt, man. And the thing is that I don't know what it's like to be in that position. Even outside of prison, right? Having to go through the process of giving birth, like, that in itself is an ordeal. It could be a joyous or a tumultuous ordeal, but it's an ordeal nonetheless. And that's something that I will never experience. I will never know. But one thing I know for sure, and especially those of us who are those of us who possess testicles, I'll put it that way, we will never be able to experience this. But we can try to empathize as much as we possibly can. And just because you don't understand something doesn't mean you still can't sympathize with the person and what they go through and respect what they go through and try to be and try to give them dignity. This is something that I think that a lot of people just do not think about. Like, they will talk about different people's experiences and discount them, and it's probably because they just don't understand it. It's just like a white person discounting a black person's experience. It's like, you don't know what it's like to be black. You know what I'm saying? Or it's just like, I can never say, I can never identify with what a trans person goes through because I'm not trans. I can get close to it because I'm gay, but I can't identify what a trans person is actually going through. And so that's, you try to put yourself in their shoes. And even if you necessarily can't, you give them as much grace as you possibly can. And you accommodate those feelings. And you listen to their experiences. And you believe them. So yeah. My heart goes out to Assata Shakur. Nobody should have to go through what she went through. But yeah, so this is why this autobiography is deeply important. Because this is not only just a woman's experience, it's a black woman's experience, and it's also a woman in our carceral system's experience. To my fellow men out there that are watching this, when it comes to books like this, pay keen attention and take everything to heart. Because we need to be able to at least sympathize with what a lot of women in our country are going through. Because that's deeply important. That solidarity has to go cross-gender. Just like we want, women to have solidarity with us as men, we have to have solidarity with women. They may not know what we go through, right? But we also do not know what they go through. But we listen to their stories, we listen to their history, and we do our best to make sure that they don't go through the atrocities that they go through, and we don't go through the atrocities we go through. That's very important. Solidarity between us all. So, thanks again. I will also be getting into the next reading of The Good Doctor. We'll be getting to the next chapter in Laziness Does Not Exist by Dr. Devon Price. I'll be reading that again soon. This is also a really good book, so I can't wait to get into this. And did you like the stream? And also, see that little red box that says subscribe? Turn it gray. Subscribe. And also, if you're already subscribed, check to see if you still are, because some people have been getting their subscriptions removed lately. So I think that's very important to check, double check. All right. Thanks to the patrons on Patreon and Coffee. For without you guys, I would not be able to do this. Thank you to all the subscribers, and thank you to all the members. Yes, I do have memberships as well. So thank you so very much to all of you. Also, Be sure to watch also the interview that I have with United for East Palestine. Um, East Palestine. I never. I know it's supposed to be Palestine. Either way, be sure to watch that. Um, that should be uploaded by now, and that's an interview. We'll be talking about that. So I can't wait to get into that interview for you guys to see. That's gonna be really interesting discussion. And yeah, so be sure to water your plants, water yourselves. Reading is fundamental. And hey, express solidarity with all. Oh, and mwah, forehead kisses. Happy day to all of you. Bye.